A spokesperson wrote back that they are not yet granting interviews.
There you go.
Okay, there you go. So Scripps, this is an interesting hack because in regards to the Fauci emails that have recently come out, one of the emails that was receiving a lot of attention was someone named Christian Anderson, which we talked about last week last episode. And Christian Anderson spent some time. Is he currently at Scripps, or was he?
I think he is. Yeah,
we might want to pull up his CV there again.
Yeah, I can do it again.
What exactly was he talking to Fauci about?
He was saying that there's evidence
the features.
There's evidence that the virus was engineered. That was his take. And here's the bio. For those of you watching, scripps.edu/faculty/Anderson. Faculty, Christian G. Anderson, PhD, Professor, Department of Immunology and Microbiology, California campus. And he's got the whole thing there, the whole bio and everything. So
this story came out on June 3rd about Scripps getting hacked. When did the Fauci emails come out exactly?
That was the second, or maybe the first. Maybe it was June 1st.
2 days. I don't know. We're just laying out some things, not saying they're related, but it is interesting how 2 days after Christian Anderson's connection with Fauci, trying to tell Fauci that the coronavirus looks engineered, 2 days later, Scripps is hacked and causes a big old hullabaloo. Just, again, weird timeline.
Yeah. And also, a lot of these hacks, nothing seems to be, every report is like, nothing was truly compromised. It's just like the hack happened, ransomware was deployed.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how hacks work. They don't.
Well, that's a good point.
They don't necessarily immediately take everything down. That's the part of the organization that gets hacked.
With ransomware, yeah.
Yeah.
With the rents, we got to be clear, because there's a difference between a hack and ransomware.
Right.
I mean, ransomware is technically a hack, but not all hacks are ransomware. I don't remember hearing the word ransomware in that clip about the Scripps hack.
Yeah, they mentioned it.
Okay,
yeah.
So there you go. So it was another ransomware attack, and it looks like Scripps is going to need to get their hands on some Bitcoin.
Yeah, probably.
You know what's interesting? With the recent pullback of the Bitcoin price,
yes,
it seems like the timing roughly lines up with the Bitcoin pullback and a bunch of these ransomware attacks, because, these ransomware attacks are paid in Bitcoin if the company pays it. And you would want a decreased Bitcoin price so that you receive more Bitcoin for the ransomware. And then when you're done ransomwaring, pump the price back up, and booyah, your 5 million that you got from the Colonial Pipeline hack bumps up to 10 million just by the nature of the Bitcoin price.
It's not a bad point. And we'll get into a couple other sort of angles and theories about that in relationship to the whole cyber Polygon situation with the hacks going on here.
Yeah. All right.
But did you want to actually take this Wall Street Journal one? Because I'm taking the one after.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so we're staying on topic here. Some more ransomware talk. This is coming from the Wall Street Journal, and it goes like this. The headline is FBI Director Compares Ransomware Challenge to 9/11. We got to compare everything to 9/11.
Whoa.
It's all coming together.
Protest at the Capitol building, 9/11. Coronavirus, 9/11. Ransomware, 9/11. And, I joke, but really we know what's going on here.
Yeah.
And that is tapping in to the trauma.
Trauma-based mind control.
There you go. You traumatize a whole generation with 9/11, and for the rest of their lives, you have a trigger to trigger the trauma within them. So now we are using that trigger with comparison to ransomware. Let's see what they have to say. FBI Director Christopher Wray said the agency is investigating about 100 different types of ransomware, many of which trace back to actors in Russia, and compared the current spat of cyber attacks with the challenge posed by the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. Okay, quote, "There are a lot of parallels." Is there?
Oh, you mean like how they documented how they needed a terror attack before they actually conducted the attack? Is that what you're talking about, Mr. Ray?
Uh-huh. And how parallels on how the Twin Towers were insured for ludicrous amounts of money. Like, what was it? Shortly before the attacks, they had upped their insurance amount on it. Is that how there's parallels? Or is it parallels because, it's used as an excuse for starting ridiculous wars and sending the entire economy into the pits?
And I was going to say hacking into, but that's not really... Well, in the literal sense there, chipping away at least to our privacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's parallels because this will be used to take away your freedoms.
Exactly. Okay, go on.
All right. What does he really say? Let's hear. Quote, "There are a lot of parallels. There's a lot of importance and a lot of focus by us on the disruption and prevention," Mr. Ray said in an interview Thursday. Quote, "There's a shared responsibility not just across government agencies, but across private sector and even the average American." Why are we responsible for this? and why are we responsible for 9/11? I don't understand. What did I do to cause either of these things?
Seriously, that's a good point. Yeah. I like how even that's kind of the plan with everything, even with like climate change and all that, right? It's always like, it's your fault, meat eaters. It's your fault, car drivers. It's like, wait a minute, I was born into a society with cars and meat.
It's not my fault.
I didn't come up with this. Anyway, go on.
Just being used to harden the foundations of the current power structures and to turn the average man against oneself in order to be more controllable. But moving on, Mr. Ray's comments, along with his first publicly since 2 recent ransomware attacks, gripped the U.S. meat and oil and gas. Weird. Oh, I see. Meat and oil and gas industries come as senior Biden administration officials have characterized ransomware as an urgent national security threat and said they are looking at ways to disrupt the criminal ecosystem that supports the booming industry. Each of the 100 different malicious software variants are responsible for multiple ransomware attacks in the U.S., Mr. Ray said. Ransomware is a type of malicious computer code that locks up a victim network's files that hackers use to demand payment for their release, typically with digital currency like Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is pseudonymous and it can be tracked. It's on a public ledger.
Yeah.
Also
a slight a slight dig at Bitcoin here. They did not capitalize Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think that, according to some of the Bitcoin maximalists, there's Bitcoin, the capital B Bitcoin, which is like the protocol, and then Bitcoin, the lowercase b, which is more about the currency.
It's the actual currency. Yeah. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Even I learn something new every show, folks.
Hey.
This week, hackers held hostage the world's largest meat processor just weeks after the operator of an essential pipeline bringing gasoline to parts of the East Coast paid about $4.4 million to regain control of its operations and restore service. Senior officials at the Federal Bureau of Investigation for years have likened the need to confront rising cyber threats to the post-9/11 scramble against international terrorism. But Mr. Ray said the wave of recent ransomware attacks has spotlighted the toll cyber attacks can have on all Americans. Quote, "Now realizing it can affect them when they're buying gas at the pump or buying a hamburger, I think there's a growing awareness now of just how much we're all in this fight together," Mr. Ray said. Again, there's the triggering of the 9/11 trauma on everybody who lived through it. How remember post 9/11 And it's still sort of ambient throughout society, but especially post 9/11, it was the terrorists could strike anyone at any time.
Yeah.
Any group of people, any school, any
especially
church,
airports.
Of course, if every airport, terrorism can strike any one of us. We need to work together. And yeah, they are making that comparison here where, yeah, a big company getting a ransomware attack. Now, yeah, it's not a suicide vest going off or a plane flying into your house, but it's, you'll have to pay more for a cheeseburger. Ah! It is such a sort of an insulting dig at the American way of life, but not wrong, I guess. Let's continue. While the most prominent of the recent ransomware hacks disrupted gasoline deliveries and took meat processing plants temporarily offline, they represent only a fraction of some of the 100 types of ransomware the FBI is currently investigating, Mr. Wray said. Quote, those are just two, he said, adding that each of those 100 different malicious software variants, adding that each of those 100 different malicious software variants had affected between a dozen and 100 targets.
You know,
there you go. There's the connection to the coronavirus trauma.
Well, not just the trauma, but again, there's sort of maybe this is more of a spiritual thing than like a direct intentional thing, although there's some intentionality behind it too, I'm sure. But, you know, we've heard a lot of talk about, you know, biohacking and speaking to my earlier about, you know, how they just want to control our biology and everything else. Comparing software to our DNA code and then, you know, comparing a virus, a computer virus to a actual quote unquote virus that caused a pandemic. You know, it's more of a subtle, I think it's like a subtle psychological way.
Man, you really got DNA on the brain, don't you?
I've just been looking into stuff. But anyway, yeah, also just as a side note, Christopher Wray, he's the guy that Trump tried to fire a bunch of times, like over his presidency. He's like, fire him, fire the man. And then he couldn't or didn't. But anyway, yeah, this guy, the name rung a bell. And that was, I remember him being, you know, sort of a Trump target, although nothing came of it.
Yeah.
Go on.
Here we go. Quote, the scale of this problem is one that I think the country has to come to terms with, he said. Complaints to the FBI and reports from the private sector show ransomware incidents have tripled in the past year, Mr. Wray said. While private sector estimates of the toll to the U.S. economy vary widely, companies that track ransomware generally put the cost at hundreds of millions or billions of dollars annually and say it is rapidly increasing. U.S. authorities have attributed this week's attack on JBS SA, the world's biggest meat company by sales, to a criminal ransomware gang in Russia. And the White House has said President Biden plans to bring up the problem during a summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Geneva, planned for June 16th. Mr. Biden said he would look closely at whether to retaliate against Russia for the attacks. Yeah, this keeps coming up. Biden figuring out if he's going to retaliate against Russia, which is, again, sort of monotonous. And as far as the whole Russia are the bad guys thing, not saying that Russia's innocent here, but, you know, if America, the geopolitical nation state, was blamed for every criminal act an American committed, there would be world wars forever. Well, let's keep going.
That's the idea.
Yep. In the interview, Mr. Wray singled out Russia as harboring many of the known users of ransomware. Dude, I can't help it. Again, going back to 9/11. Why did we invade Afghanistan? Why did we invade Iraq? Because they were harboring terrorists. Yeah. In the interview, Mr. Wray singled out Russia as harboring many of the known users of ransomware, providing a haven. Again, the haven was the same word. Afghanistan was a haven for terrorists. Anyways, providing a haven that security experts and U.S. officials have said has allowed criminal ransomware gangs to flourish throughout Eastern Europe. We're going to invade Russia. This is horrible.
I think so. Or
this
something.
is bad news.
Russia,
Something
China. All this sounds like